Hey, what's up? I'm going to do a video about the top 10 best games in the last decade. Been thinking about this over the last week, and I've been putting a list together. Finally got the games out to talk about 10 games I feel that have really been amazing in the last decade. I had some honorable mentions that I'm showing right now, so I'll show those real quick. I've been really big into indie games, but at the end of the day, I still think that the big AAA games are still some of the best, most fun and enjoyable, especially fun to replay. These 6 I would label as honorable mentions. That means that they aren't the top tier best of the best to be in like a list of 10. But I got Halo Reach, which I think was one of the last best Halo games. Phenomenal. I think I replayed that over the summer. It was still a lot of fun. Even being 10 years old now, which is incredible. I think because it came out in 2010, I think. Tomb Raider, the reboot, was a really great game. Kind of want to get that for PlayStation 4, even though it's not that expensive, but just to see the differences, just a little bit of differences between the older and the newer versions. SteamWorld Dig 2, I think was just phenomenal. I think you should give it a try if you like platformers, but having like a character that builds and evolves over time. The character collects things. You explore different zones. The pacing and the gameplay is a lot of fun. Really great game. It's not long too, so you could replay it and beat it again, and it's got a good story to it as well. Really great game. Sleeping Dogs has always been a game that I've always gone back to. I think I've gone back to it at least 2 or 3 times. I think I've only ever beat it once. But I'm a person that I really do not like open world games. But for some reason, the way that this game is put together was just so good. I know that it came out a little bit before Grand Theft Auto 5, and like everybody just was all about Grand Theft Auto 5, and I do just feel that deserves to have its praise, but I don't know. I just always thought that Sleeping Dogs was just so fun. The music was great. The characters were interesting. I think with Grand Theft Auto, I could never like really get behind like what the story they were trying to convince you as, and the story with this is what I think is what really makes me interested in what I'm doing in the game, basically being an undercover cop. But yeah, such a good game. I think it came out around 2011 or 2012. The Metro series, both of these games are really good. I tried playing Exodus over the summer and wasn't a huge fan of it, but those two, Metro Last Light and Metro 2033, I mean, I could just sit down and play those right now, and it's just classic first-person shooters, just really great, amazing, from the last decade. And then Rime is, I wanted to include some indie games that I really liked over the last decade, and this is just such a good game. Like, it's just kind of like a whirlwind of an emotional story, and it's not a type of game that I'm like real wild about trying to replay again, but it was just a really good story to play and experience at least one time. It's kind of like Journey, like where it's like Journey's really good, but I'm not like dying to like replay Journey. It's very similar to that. But those are the honorable mentions. Let me get into the 10. I don't have them in order, and I will just say these are the 10 that I think are the most impressive. I don't have them in any order, so I'm just gonna kind of wing it. I don't have the PlayStation 4 version, but The Last of Us, definitely deserving praise of the last decade. This game, I'm really looking forward to The Last of Us 2. The story with this that I have, I'll just do real quick, is I tried playing this, and I had played the Uncharted games, and I just couldn't get into this in the first few chapters, so I put it aside for literally like 2 years, and then I finally just was like, I wanted a new game to play. It was getting closer to like September, October, and I just like forced myself to get back into it. And I've never experienced a situation where I was just like so happy to like get back, like to get back into a game, because it was just like I'd only like touched the surface and where I was at, and it was like there's so much more to this game, so amazing. Again, not any order, but I'm kind of cheating with this because it's just me mentioning about games that. Not necessarily, this is kind of cheating because these games came out in 2005 and probably 2001, 2003, 2-ish, but they're the remasters that would have came out in the decade. And then this is the biggie that was obviously, they're all remasters essentially, but they all came out in this past decade and just phenomenal. Resident Evil, all of those. I think I have the Revelation games. I just didn't feel like adding them to the pile. Just stick to like 2 or 3 at a time. I'm kind of cheating here too, where I wanted to give praise to this one, but this one's probably the one that is worth more of me talking about. I probably only put in maybe 5 or 6 hours into this game, maybe a little more. I've almost beat this game 2 times just because I was so interested in just replaying such a good game. But both of them, great, phenomenal third-person shooters in the last decade. So impressed with this series in the last decade. This is the Wolfenstein reboot, which... if I had to put them in order of the best, like top out of the 3, there's three games that you're seeing here. I replayed this over the summer and just was just so captivated at how good this was, even though this came out early in the console lifespans of Xbox One, PlayStation 4. But still, best one. So 1, 2, and 3, but still great. Amazing first-person shooters will probably still be phenomenal 5 to 10 years from now. Again, this is kind of cheating, but this is the Sniper Elite series that I hold near and dear to my heart because they're just so fun to play and replay and just jump in and do a level or start from scratch and play from the beginning. Especially this, man. This is my go-to guilty pleasure game. I know that they're doing a 4th game, since there's 3 Zombie Army games. They're doing the Zombie Army 4 that's coming out in 2020. But I'm just such a fan of Rebellion. They really have done a good job with this series, the Sniper Elite. Just really great third-person shooters, good World War II type of games. I think I would really like to replay this actually. I hold this near and dear over the last year because not only is this one of like the best RPGs of the decade, I would argue, but it was something that like my son, it was pretty much like when I look back on this will be like one of the first video games that my son really got into. And I just would assume that he would be into like just really simple things, like simple games, like introduce Mario or Mario Kart, and that would hold his attention. But no, he wanted to play. He was so interested in in this. Just like everything about it. He just kept calling it the Dragon game. He wanted to play more Dragon game. And that kind of spilled into like him trying to get interested in other Dragon Quest games. Like we were playing Dragon Quest Builders, Dragon Quest Builders 2. He doesn't even know that there's Dragon Quest games that are like on the handhelds and stuff like that. So he just was really all about this, and this is a phenomenal RPG. Definitely one of the best of the last 10 years. I'm getting down to the wire. I'll have 4 more to go. Spider-Man. This was such a good game. I was very, like, what's the word to say? I hesitated, like, jumping on the bandwagon to enjoy this game, just because I just assumed, growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, and just thinking, like, like franchise in a video game just automatically spelled not that greatest. But this is where this is so far from that truth, is that this is so good. They did such a good job with this game, and I think I also was like, I didn't want it to be better than the Batman games. And the Batman games are great. I mean, I should definitely include them as like a thought, as, you know, they should be in this conversation too. But and I'm not even really that big of a Spider-Man fan. Like I like Batman way better. But everything about this game, they just knocked it out of the park. Like they just made it you sympathize with him as a character. The story that they created was very good. The combat and gameplay, everything about it, pacing. It was one of those games that, like, this very, very rarely happens, is where, like, I'm just kind of, like, nonchalantly just like, okay, yeah, when I have some time, I'll play the game that I'm playing this week or these last few weeks. This like, was eating up my time of, like, I just can't wait to get back and play this game, and that doesn't happen. And again, this is an open world, basically open world game. And I usually do not get excited for open world games, but this one I definitely did, and it definitely deserves to be talked about within this past decade. Amazing game. I'm cheating here with these remasters, but I'm not really representing Nintendo very well. But I did look at my my handheld 3DS games, and I'm trying to think, like, what were some games that came out in the last decade that were from my 3DS collection, and I just automatically thought, you know what, the Zelda games were remastered for 3DS, and they're just so good. I think I beat Ocarina of Time on my Nintendo 64 at least 2 times, and I think I beat this once on the 3DS, and I just, you know, I thought it was really great how they just kind of upscaled everything, and everything just worked really well still, and still really fun and enjoyable. Same way with Majora's Mask. I think I've never beaten Majora's Mask, but I've gotten close to the end probably 2 or 3 times, and it's just a tedious game, but definitely deserves to be talked about as amazing Zelda games. I really do like Zelda, but I didn't want to include Breath of the Wild. I just I like Twilight Princess. I liked the other one on the Wii. I can't think of what it's called. And I thought Breath of the Wild was good, but it just wasn't great. It wasn't phenomenal. It wasn't like, all I want to do is brag about how great that. It didn't captivate me that much, but I do still get really excited talking about these 2 games, and they came out in this decade, so it counts. I guess I've been leaving these 2 at the end because I would definitely count these as like 2 of the best. So I didn't do it in top 10. These are 10 of the best series and individual games, but these are down to my top 2. So I don't want to label them second and first, but I'll just go ahead and talk about these first here. It's the Uncharted series. I know that these came out on PlayStation 3 at the end of the 2000s, but then it was remade and came out in, I think, 2015, 16-ish. And then this is the Mac Daddy of them, which I just love the game. I love like the premise of the game of it being. I think 4 and 2 are two of my favorites. But the whole series is just really great, and I don't know. I don't think it gets enough. It doesn't get enough praise. I mean, I feel like Last of Us does, but Uncharted is just a Sony series that doesn't get bragged about enough, I think. I mean, this game was just phenomenal. Like, I could play this right now and just be like, just still be impressed with how great that is. Especially with how it looks. I mean, it still looks great 4 years later. But I hold this one pretty close, near and dear to me, because my brother bought me this, and I wasn't expecting that. I was in his wedding, and this was the gift that he gave me, and it just so happened to be like that. That was a great, surprise, and then it just turned out to be an amazing game, and I'll just never forget that it's got a good story to it, for me personally, and the game, the ending of it all. All right, here is the last of the top 10 series of games. I didn't want to just choose one. If I had to choose one, I'd probably just be safe and pick Dark Souls. Demon Souls can't be in the conversation because I think Demon Souls came out in 2007 or 8, I think. Maybe 9, but definitely before this decade. But all of these did. I think Dark Souls came out in 2010, maybe 12. 15, I think, and then 16 or 17, but just amazing games. I haven't played Sekiro yet. I did buy that back in Black Friday, but I can't say enough about these games. They're just very addicting. I remember telling somebody about this series that had no clue what these games were, and I just remember telling them in the most basic concept, like, and then like reflecting on like this series is like so basic but just so amazing. It's like, it's hard to describe that. Like, they're on, what also makes them so great too is that they're like almost like horror games. But it's like, you wouldn't think that they're horror games, but they are, really, when you think about it. It's like everything is trying to kill you, and very few things in the games you can trust. And every time you stop at a location to take a breather, and when you come back from that breather, everything's trying to kill you again, and they've come back. But it's just definitely deserving of like something big that has happened in video games in the last 10 years is this the Souls series, or Bloodborne, Soulsborne, whatever you want to call it. And I think it definitely would be close to my like number one if I was gonna label it one. I don't want to do that because all these games are just so good. But it's been a good 10 years, and it'll be interesting to see what video games will be like 10 years from now when I'm in my 40s. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what your top games are. You don't have to give me 10, but just maybe what you would say was the best of the 10 years. And yeah, later.